Melania Trump is in Africa. Now she's making the trip. She has visited Ghana, she's visited Malawi, Kenya, and also Egypt. And in the midst of her tour, she was talking about education, she was talking about healthcare, and doing different things with U.S. aid. Well, that is not really the issue that we're talking about here, but the outrage that came out on social media about particular hats that Melania Trump was wearing on a safari in Kenya. Now, if you look at the picture here, that is her wearing this particular hat. Now, the reason why people are outraged, this hat is called a British pith hat. Now, this hat itself is a representation of colonialism and slavery. Now, the history of this is when the colonial oppressors that came to the African continent, they were wearing hats like this, and we'll put up also the hat, different type of pith hats that they had back in that time period. And they would capture and take Africans from the African nations all the way to the British empires. 3.1 million Africans went, and only 2.7 million Africans actually made it there. Now, slavery lasted in the British empires from 1640 to 1833, but when it was outlawed in British empires. Now, the issue with this is Melania wearing this hat is a representation of the colonialists who have conquered these nations. And the only reason these nations speak English is because they were colonized. And people feel a certain way about that today. It is not just one of those things. It is hurtful. It is painful to look at any representation that represents slavery or colonialism. Now, to say if Melania didn't know nothing about this, she just liked the hat, fine. Let's go with that. It wouldn't take her much to look on Google or somebody that worked for her to see what is the big issue, why people are saying something, and find out that little bit of information that we discussed. Now, you would think that maybe once she find out, she would have a particular opinion about it, to say, oh, well, you know, I didn't know, X, Y, Z. But no, Melania Trump will not respond that way. You remember, she's the wife of Donald Trump. So I want you to hear the clip that we're going to play.
We just completed an amazing trip. We went to Ghana, we went to Malawi, we went to Kenya. Here we are in Egypt. I want to talk about my trip and not what I wear. And that's very important, what I do, what we're doing with US aid, and what I do with my initiatives. And I wish people would focus on what I do, not what I wear.
So she said to focus on what she do and not what she wear. Even though I know good and well somebody told her what was the issue with the pith hat, but she says that she ain't there to talk about nothing else. She don't worry about no hats. She want to talk about what she do. Now, saying that kind of statement to the people on the African continent, anyone that knows anything about history, the people who celebrate and try to link back with the African nations throughout the diaspora, is a slap in the face to have that kind of response. It's kind of like a FU response. It is not nothing that talks about the sensitivity of what happened during history, the pain, the suffering, the torment, the murder, the rapes, the oppression. Just forget all that. I'm wearing what I want to wear. Now, would she wear something that resembles Nazis? Would she do that around Jewish people? I know good and well if Jewish people would call her out on wearing that kind of attire, she would not respond the same way. We know this. But when it comes to African people or other black people somewhere throughout the world, they don't have any kind of respect for us. And the reason why they don't have respect for us is because, number one, we don't demand respect. That's first and foremost. And when we demand respect, people will respect you. It just period. Also, we're not respecting ourselves. We're doing things against ourselves, and that's why people think that they can disrespect us too, because we constantly disrespecting each other. And globally, we need to stop disrespecting each other, and globally, we need to make people respect us. Allowing all these other nations to come in to the African nations, whether they're from the West or from China, they don't respect you because you allow them to do whatever they want to do in your countries. You act like you need them. They need Africa. I said this many times before. The world needs Africa. Africa does not need the world. They have all the resources right underneath their feet. And the reason why Africa is that way, and Dr. Moonby talked about this many, many times before, is that you have very, very incompetent leaders that's running these African nations. What's going on in a lot of African nations, it would be like you sitting on $100 million in a bank account, but you in the food stamp line. You asking for welfare. You stay in the Section 8 housing, but you have $100 million in the bank. Most people that would know that, they would look at you like you're silly, what's wrong with you? And then on top of that, you're allowing people to go to that bank account and draw out, you gave them ATM cards to draw out of there. You're not even benefiting off of it. That's what I liken into African nations with their resources. They're sitting on billions and trillions of dollars, and yet the countries are poor. There's no reason for that. You have resources. You sell them at market value, you get money back, you become billionaires and trillionaires overnight. You want to work with the other nation? Fine. Let them get some resources based on a discounted price, and then they can help build your infrastructure while you sign in a contract. You need 50% of the workforce to be our people so we can learn those skills. That way we don't need you next time. And it could be a win-win. You could barter very well with your resources, but you have leaders that are extremely incompetent. They only settling for a few pennies when actually they can be living in major palaces, every last one of these leaders. But they don't think like that because they think small-minded, unfortunately. And this is why you have a young population in Africa right now that's going to turn that complete continent around. It's going to happen. All these old leaders that's 60 plus, they need to go, every last one of them. So when you see things like this and the pith hat, understand something. To me, I look at that as symbolism. I mean, what, did you put on that pith hat to let the Africans know that we're coming back to colonize you again? I mean, is that a symbol? Because I look at things like that. Why would you wear that particular hat? Out of all the hats you want to wear, you put on that one. Sure, some people may say, oh, he reading too much into the hat. Forget that. You better read into things sometime what these people do, because they believe in colonizing. They have not stood on their own at anything. And if you study European history, when they were by themselves, it wasn't a good thing at all. So they needed other groups of people to help them to survive. It's kind of like if you've seen Venom. They are similar to Venom. I'm talking about the way they acted in history. They needed to latch on to somebody else to benefit. When they stayed in Europe alone, if you just study European history, telling the truth, it was not a good place. It wasn't a good, clean place. It wasn't something that anyone wants to repeat. So no matter if they try to tell you that, you know, the ones who are racist, of course, they're superior. No, just look into their history when they're by themselves and say, is that superior behavior? But what do you think about Melania Trump, her response to this? And what do you think about the African nations having to put a stop to these leaders allowing the countries to be colonized? Like Zambia is just about colonized. They just had a newspaper come out, and they have Mandarin in the newspaper now. They never had Mandarin. Now all of a sudden it's Mandarin. I mean, the young people in that nation better put a stop to the Chinese and anybody else coming in, because you will not have a continent and you'll be slaves all over again in 2018 or 2019 at the rate things are going. Everybody's coming to Africa. Theresa May has came. Melania Trump has came. Everybody's coming to try to get their stake in Africa. You guys on the continent better wake up and wake up fast, because they're trying to recolonize you.